Congressman Mike Rogers, the Republican from Brighton from the Intelligence Committee, is on the other end of our line. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael. How are you this morning?
Just see what happened to the president yesterday when he was giving his speech at the podium?
I did not see what happened to the president yesterday.
Let me tell you what happened. You tell me if this is an omen or not, but here's the president at the speech. He was talking to the Fortune magazine Most Powerful Women Summit. Here's the audio of what happened.
We cannot sustain... Whoops. Was that my... Oh, goodness. That's all right. All of you know who I am.
The presidential seal fell off the podium onto the ground, and then the president made a comment about the person who affixed the seal to the podium.
I'm sure there's somebody back there that's really nervous right now. Don't you think? They're sweating bullets back there right now.
Is that a bad omen when you're the president, man, and your approval rating's low and you're coming to the midterm elections and the seal can't even stay on the podium?
Oh, I don't know if it's an omen, but it sure tells a lot where the president says it's my seal that fell off. I thought that was the presidential seal, but I do think that was probably more indicative than the seal falling off itself.
What's the real buzz about him around Washington, about his presidency so far? What do people talk about when they, and maybe not necessarily about policy, but just about him and the way he operates and the way he deals with Congress? What's the skinny?
The thing I hear the most, and I hear it from Democrats as well, is this how aloof he is. He just doesn't seem, he doesn't get into the details of just any issue. He's always on, he's the salesman in chief, if you will. And I hear that most, and I think that's frustrating. You get, folks, even the ones I disagree with passionately, the Democrats who are, have spent a long time understanding and trying to learn issues, and they apply their philosophy to them, are frustrated that they can't have those kind of conversations with the president. I don't know if he's not interested, he's not curious about the details, but again, the number one complaint I hear from them is he's aloof. He just doesn't seem interested.
That's somewhere in the middle, I guess, between, from what I understand, President Clinton was a guy who liked to debate policy and really get into long conversations, philosophical conversations. And then I'm told that President George W. Bush was a quick meeting guy, decisive, let's get on with it, what's next kind of thing.
Yeah. I've heard it described between Bush and President Obama is retail versus wholesale, where Bush was a retail guy, get in, get the information, get out. And Mr. Obama is more of a kind of a wholesale 30,000-foot guy. The details don't matter all that much to him.
Now, what about the details of what's going on in Europe? I know you're on the Intelligence Committee. You have lots of details that maybe you can't tell us about that you know about. Travel in Europe. Would you go to Paris right now and sit at Fouquet's and have a glass of a Sauvignon Blanc on the Champs-Élysées or not?
Well, boy, that's the best French I've ever heard in a long time, Michael. That's very impressive.
Merci, monsieur.
I can probably say croissant, and that would be the extent of it. I'm very impressed. Listen, they're actively pursuing wrapping folks up. If you have plans, I'm not sure I would cancel them, but I will tell you, it is the most serious plot as far as between notional and operational that I've seen in a long time, and it's folks need to be at least cautious there. And if you think about the kinds of attacks that they're talking about, you just have to be a little bit more vigilant. So having that glass of wine probably at a small cafe in Paris is not going to be a problem, and the good guys are absolutely aware and on guard. So I wouldn't cancel my trip. I wouldn't lose the money or the deposit.
Maybe should avoid the metro or the subways or the tube, as they call it in London. Would that be a safer thing to do to be more vigilant?
I'm not sure I'd even do. I think what they're looking for a larger target, and in the lines of the Mumbai attacks. If you remember the Mumbai attacks, they took over some very touristy hotels and were going through them. So I think their goal is more like that than it is trying to do a more sophisticated event on the metro system. But listen, their target sets change. They understand that the pressure is on them right now. They understand that information about their operations getting out more than they want. The one thing I think that concerned the U.S. government is the sense of urgency of conducting the operation seemed to intensify. So that's where I think you have seen this heightened sense of awareness and raising security levels across Europe.
Obviously, as a travel writer, I'm interested in the details when you talk about hotels like in Mumbai. When I was in Israel, in order to go into a hotel, very often you had to pass through a metal detector. There was a security force. When you went into a shopping mall, you passed through a metal detector, just like you're going to an airport. Do you see someday the expansion of those types of security measures to major hotels and maybe even here in the United States?
It could happen. I mean, one reason people like me support a very robust intelligence service and operations across the U.S. government is so that you can get them before you need to shut down the freedom of movement here in the United States or anywhere else. And when I say shut it down, I mean metal detectors and all of the things that go with having to heighten your security. So, in theory, if our folks are doing the right thing, if our FBI is on the job, if our CIA is getting information overseas and filtering it back, you want to catch them before you need to put metal detectors up. But, you can never rule something like that out. They are getting more aggressive. In some would argue a sense of desperation, but they're clearly still able to put operations together and try to get them operational, and that's what you're seeing with this heightened activity.
The Times Square bomber, or would have been Times Square bomber, attempted bomber, got sentenced yesterday to life in prison. Said some pretty haunting things on the way out, though, about how his effort was just a tip of the iceberg when it comes to the extremists and their efforts and the terrorists. And he also told the judge, look, I've got the right, according to Islam, to defend myself and to defend Islam. And you're not going to win an argument with somebody talking like that, are you?
Well, how do you win an argument with somebody that was willing to kill, literally thousands of innocent men and women and children just on a tourist vacation in Times Square, and was willing to take his own life? Apparently, at one point, the operation didn't call for that. That's pretty tough to argue with, and those folks are not people you can negotiate with, and that's why we need to understand. And I think his words. We need to understand the enemy that we face. Talking to these folks has very minimal value. I mean, they're already at a place where they're willing to kill themselves and you to get to heaven. It is their version of heaven. It's very, very difficult to have a conversation with them. That's why vigilance and aggressive posture on our intelligence posture is incredibly important for the safety and security of the country.
With your law enforcement background, I'm curious, Vera Ricin, the former state representative, has asked the governor to dispatch the National Guard to Flint because she says the streets are not safe. You can't walk down the street. The mayor of Flint, Dane Walling, a few minutes ago said that he doesn't think the National Guard is needed. What do you think of that concept in general of asking for the National Guard to restore order? They've had, 50 homicides in 2010 in that city?
Yeah, I mean, it is... and I have some police officers who are friends there, and they say it is as bad as I've seen it. And one officer told me that when he showed up for duty, he's already 30 cases behind, meaning that the time for him to arrive on a scene, it could be the whole shift, if at all. And so the problem here is numbers and effort. And I believe that there's a better way than the National Guard. I think the ATF and FBI criminal violent crime task forces can be applied here and be applied here very, very effectively. And I think we ought to pursue that, and we're going to try to pursue that. And I think that makes a bigger impact. And what these things do, they used to call them wolf packs. I don't know what they call them now, where they parachute into a place like Flint and very aggressively target the drug dealers, the gun dealers, people who are causing the problem, and put them away. And it makes a tremendous impact in these communities. And we have to look at maybe the state police needs to plus it up. I mean, the problem with Flint right now is they can't afford the police officers they have, and they've laid off a bunch. So you've got diminished numbers, increased poverty, increased crime, and it's a recipe for a pretty dangerous place.
Some sort of shock and awe, I guess, to get those hoodlums' attentions. The National
Absolutely.
Federation.
You start taking away their leadership and having an impact on drugs and guns in that city, and it will have an impact, I guarantee you.
The National Federation of Independent Business has called you a guardian of small business. Congratulations on that award.
Well, thank you very much. I am always honored and proud to have it. I grew up with all of my friends when I was growing up, or at least my associations with this Brighton Chamber of Commerce. My mom was the director. We're small business owners. I have to tell you, when I was growing up, I thought because of that everybody owned their own small business. You worked 7 days a week and you didn't make any money. I thought that's what happened when you grew up.
It
so
happened to
I
you.
appreciate the challenges that they have and how difficult it is, and how important it is to keep the federal government and the state government off their backs and out of their cash registers so that they can survive and employ people.
It's tough being your own boss. It's not everything it's cracked up to be. It takes vigilance constantly, as you say, 24/7. We appreciate your 24/7 vigilance as a member of Congress, and we'll talk to you soon.
Michael, I look forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much. Merci, mon ami. Au revoir.